Welcome everyone to Connected Learning TV. My name is Tara Brown. This is our 33rd webinar in our series. So far, our webinar content has been viewed in over 95 countries, and we've really enjoyed seeing such a diverse community develop over these past several months. To those watching on live stream, we encourage you to use the chat stream to introduce yourselves, connect with each other, share resources, and definitely ask questions for those here in the Google Plus Hangout. The URL for our public group notes Google Doc for today will be included in the live stream chat, thanks to John Baraloni, who's behind the scenes. We'd like your assistance in capturing highlights and sharing resources related to today's topic of how we can move toward a vision of education and learning that is beneficial for everyone involved in schools. And before our guest speaker, David, and his students take the floor, usually what we'll do is we'll have everyone in the Hangout introduce themselves, but everyone today is in the same window. So, David, before we get started, how about you introduce everyone that is on the panel today there behind you?
Well, our panelists from, let's see, over by the wall, our Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, John Davis, a colleague of ours here on the faculty at Righetti High School, Laura Rasgato. Next to her, we've got Matt Patel, Dulce Vargas, Sam Garrison, and behind them, Caitlin First, Ileana Gutierrez, and Felicitas Ruiz. All of these students have taken a leadership role and said that they wanted to participate on camera today. Everybody else in the background is also participating. They're going to do it Occupy style and pass up notes so that the panelists can forward the questions and comments.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we're very honored to have David Preston and his class and the rest of the panelists today. David has taught at universities and graduate institutes and consulted on matters of learning and organizational development for 20 years. For the past 7 years, he has also taught English for students of all ability levels in grades 9 through 12 in Los Angeles and on California's Central Coast. And like I said, we're joined by one of his classes today and some of the other panelists who will help us understand the transformative power of open source learning. So David and everyone behind you, it's all you.
Thanks, Tara. We're living in an amazing time. We're constantly bombarded with all of these wonderful messages about the information age and the potential for open source, the potential for technology to engage learners and make lessons more interesting. But ultimately, amid all of this conversation, there's very little opportunity for learners to actually take the lead in the process. At the end of the day, we have relied on a long-standing social contract that says if you go to school and meet the requirements and graduate, you'll have a life that's equal to or greater than the quality of your parents. And we're looking at an increasingly complex and uncertain future. And in that regard, we now have an opportunity to go way beyond the one-dimensional standardized testing. Whether it's good or bad or indifferent isn't the issue here. The point is it's not as informative as it might be. If I test a student at one point in time, I can see where they put pencil to paper, but I don't know why. Open source learning gives the students several opportunities in this space. First of all, they can self-express using the actual tools of the information age instead of participating in a walled garden. They're right out there in the culture. All of our students have member blogs. They're all publishing directly to the internet. We don't have a use policy other than to intuitively use the morality that we think is a good idea. We reinforce each other's work as a community. We're starting with individual self-expression and rapidly moving into collaboration and thinking about ways to add value for the community. As that happens, as you'll hear from some of our panelists, students are not only making suggestions about the curriculum, they're also creating instructional resources to help one another. They're doing things that have value that don't normally show up in the scorecard. And in that way, we're actually creating a Moneyball moment for education. When you think about the way that people have kept statistics in sports, Shane Battier is another example from the NBA. The old way of keeping statistics, rebounds, scoring, whatever, he wasn't showing up, but the strange thing was he was winning championships at every level. And it caused people to ask, well, what is he doing that is so meaningful in the process? Well, when students publish their own work to the blogs, and when they participate in collaboration through platforms like mind maps, YouTube, etc., they're creating a transparent record of their thinking. And we've never had that in education. We've never had a learning model in an institutional setting that mapped to a learner's actual development as opposed to taking snapshots in time of an analog process. Above and beyond that, the collaborations that they're beginning to engage in now are leading to a greater sense of value. And whether or not they turn that into ventures, they do start thinking about entrepreneurship as a function of value and not just money or viral fame on the internet. The communities that they're creating start with the campus community and their local geographic community, but they quickly evolve into personal learning networks and communities of interest online, to the point that some of my students are now talking about a massively multiple player online learning cohort. 500,000 people studying for an AP exam would be an interesting moment. Several students from last year's course did things like created a microfinance operation that helped a group in Africa, started a consulting outfit to help peer-to-peer digital life, anti-bullying, all that kind of stuff, but putting it not in those terms, putting it in terms that peers recognize and are attracted to. So this is definitely a pull-based process, and on one hand, it's the ultimate in community development. On the other hand, it's the ultimate in faith-based initiatives. Stereotypically, high school students aren't really allowed, with assumedly good reason, to take the charge. And now that they are, they're proving that they're worthy, and they're proving that they can handle it responsibility-wise and accountability-wise. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to the panel and let them speak for themselves, and then I'll chime back in whenever it's helpful.
Okay, I guess I'll go. What I really like about this course is that it's really personalized to your needs, because now it's no longer a course that a teacher gives you. It's my course. Like, what I'm doing for me is different from what Dulce or Matt or Ileana or Caitlin or Felly are doing for themselves. And what I really like is there are some things you can't reflect in a test or an essay that you can see. I'm putting work into my blog. I'm putting all this effort to understand what I need to understand, and I'm doing more to reflect who I am. And so that's what I really enjoy about this course.
I think personally, you get to express yourself a lot more in this course. You have a lot of more, you're actually making your grade. I mean, in other classes, the teacher's like, I don't give you a grade, you make it. But it's usually to what they say, and here you can have imaginative rule over what you want to do. You're not going to be penalized if your blog has music on it, or if it's different from the person next to you. If you look at every member's blog, everyone has their own style, and I just think it's really awesome that we finally get to express ourselves and we're not being penalized for it, or we're just getting credit for putting all that work into it.
I think that the degree of personal expression brings a lot of richness to how we're learning. How we can see each other's blogs and how it's an ongoing process of their own learning. We can take away from other people's work, or they can take from ours, and it brings a lot of perspective to anything we can see.
I like that rather than just receiving a certain mark for something like an A, B, or F. You ever got that? That from instead of just getting that letter, you can have on your blog everything that you've done, and that can showcase more, and it can show what you actually put into it, rather than someone just seeing a grade that you got for it. You can show them everything you did and show more of yourself within that.
I feel very much accomplished taking this course because I can go back and look at everything I've done on my blog, anything extra I've done, and then other people can see it too, or I can go and look at their blogs and see how amazing they're doing their blog and want to strive to be like that as well. And I think it provides a friendly competition almost to say, oh, okay, well, they're doing that, I should go do something different, or what can I do to think outside of the box to make my learning further.
Also the fact that he asks us if reading in class is helping us, then we'll read in class. If breaking out into small little groups helps us, then we'll do that. And we have an input in how we learn, and I think that's very effective.
So what are some of the examples of the posts that you have up on your blogs?
So we're reading Hamlet in class right now, and obviously Shakespeare isn't the easiest thing to understand today. And so what I did I was watching Law and Order and Deadly Women, and I was thinking about it. And if you think about Hamlet, it's sort of like its own little court case. So I rewrote scenes of the play and made it into a court rendition that's easy to understand, and it has its moments where you're like, wow, that's actually pretty funny, because I take what Shakespeare is putting into his innuendos and I put it straight into the court rendition, and it really makes it easier to understand, but it's also fun, and it's also helping me understand Hamlet because I'm working with it in a different way than other people are.
Not only like specific class homework assignments are on our blog. Also, if you go on some members' blogs, they have like ideas of how to like change up your blog, make it different. Or like I know Matt, he had like some people were having trouble with links on our blog, so he also posted that. So we all help each other with different things that might make our learning better on our blogs.
That's awesome. So what are you guys using for your blog platform?
We're using Blogger, and the reason that I made that decision was because part of I'm going to peer in from the side. Part of the opposition to using technology in the classroom is cost. And so I really wanted the students to demonstrate, you know, along the way we're learning a lot about the business models and affordances of the internet. And so it's important for them to understand that if we're using something for free, that we're likely not the consumer, we're the commodity, and to understand that environment and how they fit into it. But I also wanted the model for anyone who wants any part of this, that you can do it with freeware.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's also some technical skill sets that are being built through this process as well.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of that relies on trial and error, and that also builds in collaboration to the process. If you look at traditional models of instruction, I underteach. Explicit direct instruction or the Madeline Hunter 7-step lesson plan, that's not the direct input that I provide when we talk about technology. So much of technology is learned by fumbling around on websites and pointing and clicking. And what's important here, as with the content from the core course, is the process of thinking. We're thinking about how to be critical, how to be imaginative, how to solve problems. For about an hour, I was working with a few students before this call to solve more than a couple technical difficulties of our own. Everything in the public school is a workaround because we're not working with the latest equipment. And it's a challenge to reconcile the world we live in with the world that you see on the internet commercials where the business professionals walking through the airport and everything works just fine. Mm-hmm. The other reason that we use freeware is because it's accessible from anywhere without a license. One thing that's come up in conversation with peers and with adults around using technology is access. And that's a serious question for a lot of people. It would be a cruel proposition if it wasn't so easy to solve. And part of the issue is helping people understand how their devices can be used as more effective learning tools and not just toys. This group doesn't have that problem because they're already using it for that. But when it comes to particularly people, let's say over the age of 35, there's an issue about, well, do we have the right to require students to use technology in the same way that we use books? I say we do. Not all of my students have books at home either. But we also have libraries and community spaces and friends for that as well. And I think that if the panelists want to chime in on this, I think that solving problems has been a wonderful opportunity for people to collaborate and even get to know some new people in the course.
I mean, sometimes it's not easy finding solutions on the internet because the internet isn't always reliable. But if you need help on like Blogger, I usually go to someone else's blog and see how they do it. And if I like their format, like Matt, he showed me how to do hyperlinks, or Yubi, he showed me how to put music on it. And if I like that format, I'll comment and make a post on it. And if other people see my blog, they'll see links to their blogs and see how they did it. So if they don't like my way, they can see their way.
Also, we just learned about internet bubbles, and just got me thinking, when you're doing collaborative working, your friend next to you, when he searched, or the filter, sorry, when he used the internet, he might have got completely different results from you, so you get different opinions when you work collaboratively.
Another benefit of the Blogger platform is that it's not closed off to the rest of the community that wants to join our classroom. So if, like, one of us in here reached out to a community in LA who was also working on Hamlet, and they're taking advice from her blog and her personally so that they can improve their own learning process.
So you have a lot of community outside your classroom that are commenting on your posts?
We're just starting to build that, Tara. We're talking actually with Howard Rheingold in conference tomorrow, and the students have read his Art of Hosting a Good Conversation Online, and they're starting to get selections from NetSmart. We've taken the first 2 months of the year to make sure that we're solid on the technology and that we understand the dynamics and how to encourage the building of a good community.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we've gone through that, we're going to start using collaborative tools to make that a little bit more operational. And then the next step is to expand the network beyond the school community and the geographic community.
So then you're thinking about privacy and safety and having it be a positive experience, or what are some of the things you're thinking about around those privacy and safety?
Well, the core elements of privacy and safety, and actually I'm going to invite Ian to come up in a moment, because several of my students last year that created Commons Consulting, that peer-to-peer consultancy I mentioned, I'm not the best candidate in the room. My formal computer training ended on a TRS-80 in 1980. And so like a lot of people, I've figured it out along the way through use. But I defer to the experts. Part of my envisioning a new role for teachers is to have a community of thought leaders that they can access to get students the best information that we've got to offer. Well, last year, one of my students happened to be a white hat in his own right and very capable when it came to online security and helping people understand what the ins and outs were. And so I had him teach the course. And from there, students started developing a different understanding of things like passwords, how to have conversations that didn't lead to flaming and all that kind of stuff. But I have to say that it's different. As much as I'd like to think that I talking to students is the same thing as Ian or a peer talking to students, it's not. The environment of school makes a big difference, and any adult in this environment at the front of a classroom who's talking to students about online privacy or security, even if the message is exactly the same, it sounds completely different. So Ian, why don't you come on over and I'll let you speak to this one.
Hi, I'm Ian. I graduated last year, and I've been here with the class helping out with tech support and just kind of being, I don't know, the third person that they can talk to. So last year, I gave a presentation to our class on online security and digital citizenship. Just kind of basics, what to do, what not to do, I guess. And nothing was too advanced, and it wasn't it didn't require any prior knowledge. It was just stuff that you could learn by Googling it, I guess. But the fact that it came from another student made it entirely different for everyone. They were hearing it from somebody that they knew as more of a friend than as a teacher, and all I did really was go up there and say, here's what you should do online, and this is what I've learned online, and if you have anything to add to it, go ahead. So it was really cool to see that people had already wanted to learn this kind of thing. It's just they saw it in a different light when a student went up there, and that's really what the whole blog idea was about. Is all of us were doing the same work, and we were all seeing each other do the same work, and it changed the way we were thinking about things.
What about the parents? Have any of them had any concerns? Have you spoken to them to sort of pass on some of your thoughts?
Hack the school night.
Yeah, actually, an interesting thing happened. Myself and another student who graduated last year, Dr. Preston was gone during the back-to-school night, and we figured, hey, I mean, we knew the class, we could go ahead and run back-to-school night. So we called it Hack to School Night, and it was run by 2 former students. And we had kind of, I wouldn't say assumed, we felt like the parents would be afraid of the new technology or the way of learning or whatever the problem was. And the first class period we got through, we had several parents come up to us saying, you know, oh, this is amazing. You guys are doing so many cool things with technology in the classroom. And we were completely blown away. And then later in the night, we eventually got parents going, you know, hey, can we comment to the blog? That's not weird or anything, is it? No, that's awesome. Go ahead. We also had parents asking us, you know, can we get involved? Can we help? What can we do? We want to just be a part of this. So it was the outreaching to the parents is a really important part of this.
So how do you want the parents to help or be involved?
Tara, I think a big part of this, and I know the DML is involved in the same cause, is blurring the boundaries that traditionally separate people in the search for information that's going to help them. We actually have a mother and daughter team that's about to teach a lesson on Dickens and Dr. Seuss through Skype. We've got parents who, parent of one of my students is an elementary school teacher in the community who I think may be trying to join this call eventually. But we've got intergenerational opportunities that we've never had before. And in an era when there's less trip slips, you know, there's less transport out of the school, there's much less access from the general public to get into a school, I think that this is an important cause that goes beyond, you know, the traditional concerns about, oh my gosh, will someone object to what I'm doing? I think that some of our discourse about education relies on stereotypes that were once helpful but now are more of a hindrance. When I talk to people, we're all concerned. We all see opportunity. We all see reason to look back and question our practice. And whether, you know, I'm a parent also. My daughter's 3. I don't want her anywhere near this stuff yet, but I want her to have the mental skills so that when she gets the tools, that she'll be able to leverage them to the fullest capacity and not be at a disadvantage in the culture or in the economy. And for our parents, it definitely runs a gamut from tech savvy to I've never used this stuff before. We're actually starting a series of hangout nights so that parents can teach other parents, can teach us, and learn what they need to know along the way.
That's fantastic. So for the graduate there, it's Ian, right?
Yeah.
So have you, from what you learned when you were taking the class last year and now that you're out of school, have you seen benefits from what you learned in class and participating?
Yeah. Actually, I've seen it kind of everywhere. I go to the community college, so admittedly, it's not the most strenuous work, but the work that I still know people that I graduated with, and most of us connect using the same kind of tools. Some of us, we use Blackboard, but a lot of us will use Google Plus as a hangout, and then we'll document all of our text in Google Plus, and we'll have, I don't know, a Dropbox file where we keep all of our text from what we discuss. And it's all just basic stuff we learned in Dr. Preston's class. A lot of it's more of the idea that we can use the internet to find tools and resources to use to help learn, as opposed to use it for learning, I guess it would be.
Great, thank you. Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
Anybody?
From Alex Lane.
Oh, I can't hear. Do you mind speaking up a little bit?
All right. I have a comment from Alex Lane, and his comment was that he's always seen the point of blogs as posting his work for others to see. It's not really showing himself how he's learning, it's more showing everyone else how he's learning, and that's the point of the blogs to him, and that's why he values it.
So, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of positive experiences. Is there anyone that's feeling challenged with this new paradigm, or, you know, is there anyone that can speak to that?
I think for all of us at the very beginning, it was a really big hassle. Everyone was like, how do we get our blogs up? Or how do we do this? How do we do that? But it's all with collaborative working, and having Ian here as well, or people who have graduated. They all kind of, and Dr. Preston, they all took us step by step through it. And now that we got a hang of it, it's like, oh, did you see what I posted on my blog last night? It's all a quick thing. And if there's one little thing that's giving us trouble, we know we have people to go to for it.
And along with that, I think one of the issues that I've heard, they might be being shy because I'm in the room, but a big issue that we all contend with is when I go online, how am I practicing mindfulness so that I don't spend 20 minutes doing the things that distract me that I didn't intend? And how does this not tether me even more closely to a medium that I'm being told can be addictive and can take too much out of my life and prevent me from going outside? So a big part of what we're doing together is talking about the process. I think it's important to make the point, this isn't about the tools. It's very easy to confuse this with thousands of other communities around the world that are using blogs and wikis and other platforms to augment their in-person instruction with an online component. That's not what this is about. This is about using whatever tools are handy. I mean, if Enzo Ferrari fell in love the way EdTech is today with apps and tools, if he fell in love with a screwdriver, we never had I would have never watched Magnum PI. So for us, it's not so much can you do a blog really well, it's can you think your way around problems, see opportunities, and then leverage every tool at your disposal in the modern age to make things happen and expand your network in the process.
So in terms of networks, for a second, what about with the learners in the room sharing what they're learning and paying it forward so that others outside of the classroom can also have an opportunity?
That's what we're about to start with the external networking. Some of the students have looked. Is Socorro here? One of our students got a hit on her blog from a teacher in Los Angeles, and I'm delighted. The teacher never contacted me, but she was asking the student to please give her some advice on how to use this technology and where did she get the resources for whatever the piece of, I think it was Canterbury Tales. That's exciting. And some of that's happening naturally. You know, obviously we don't do any search engine optimization or you know, professional marketing in that regard. But through the students' social networks, they're starting to reach out. Last year, there was a New York Times article about a group of students in Mexico who came over the border in San Ysidro every day to school in San Diego. And it turned out that one of my students was in a summer program with one of those students, and they created an opportunity for our class to help and also to get help, because part of networking is realizing whatever you know isn't necessarily the end-all, be-all. We stand to get as well as to give. And to make that a reciprocal process that incorporates value, relationships, that's the kind of stuff that most of us don't learn until we're in the professions and somebody says, why aren't you on LinkedIn? Or why aren't you going to mixers and how do you introduce yourself? So there's a lot of meta to this that we're just starting to codify and create a theoretical framework to express. But the students are just on the cusp. Next month, if you were to ask them at this time, their page views are already going up as a result of this conference. They came in this last week saying, wow, the traffic on my blog is up. And we talked about the fact that DML was doing this and posting up a link. And they're just starting that process now.
Great. So we have a question from our pal Howard Reingold. He asks, in regards to critical thinking, what is Dr. Preston's approach to using Wikipedia in the classroom?
They're laughing. We just had this conversation a couple of days ago. You know, the pithy way to answer that, and hi, Howard, is it's a great place to start and it's a terrible place to stop. I think Wikipedia is a wonderful resource. In fact, Denise Cooper is going to be online with us at some point during the semester. We're big into open source. I'm a huge fan of Linus Torvalds' quote that the future of everything is open source. And so I don't see a credibility issue like some teachers do, but, you know, don't go to Wikipedia. And we talk a lot, partially because we're thinking about the internet in general, and you've heard some comments about filter bubbles and about search tools. We don't know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know until we evaluate the credibility of sources and develop the critical skills, what Howard would call trap detection, to determine what we can rely on and then represent in our own research to support our own thinking.
So what are you, speaking of Howard's social media classroom, have you taken a lot from, you've taken his course, right? You
I took the Mind Amplifier course. Howard and I met when I gave a talk on this at the Institute for the Future last May. Mm-hmm. And after that, and we became friends, I read, you know, I went into the world of Howard, and it's awesome. And that was a big eye-opener for me because I didn't realize there was such a rich literature around this specific topic. And, you know, it's a wonderful thing for a teacher to sit in front of a class and say, hey, I didn't know this existed, and let's investigate more about how we can fully understand what it is that we're doing. So the Mind Amplifiers and NetSmart and the Art of Hosting Good Conversations Online, among other things, have given the students a bit more context that there is a literature on this, and it does go back several decades, and it's not quite the blue ocean that some people in our community make it out to be.
So as an educator, as a teacher, are you talking with other teachers in order to share what you're doing in the classroom within the school that you're at or outside of it?
I think right now the stage that we're in is I'm talking to the early adopters. Some teachers are early adopters, most aren't. So this isn't something where I think all too often in schooling institutions there's a new initiative or a new idea and it gets done to people. And that's antithetical to open source learning. This is all pull-based. If someone sees an advantage and wants to pursue this, I'm happy to help them in whatever way I can because I think this is the future of learning. Ultimately, when we build software around this and we get granular with it, we'll be able to paint an entire multidimensional picture of someone's learning process throughout their lives. We'll also be able to look at information width in communities and systems. Right now I'm working with a couple of researchers on how the second law of thermodynamics increases information complexity in a system and how we can use that to evaluate learning communities as a whole. But where we are right now, I'm not out there trying to get people to do likewise. I'm just a resource for people who see an opportunity for their learning communities.
So if you don't mind switching the camera, we'd love to see the superintendent and our other panelists there. I want to hear more about you know, this approach in your school and your thoughts and hurdles and all that.
Well, first of all, this is one class in one of our schools. We have 3 comprehensive high schools and a continuation school in our district. When Dr. Preston and I first got connected, I think we were both a little skeptical of each other. I'm not sure that he really wanted to meet me when he heard who I was. But we were actually put together by a former student of his who wound up being roommates with my son up the road at Cal Poly. And we had the good sense to develop a bit of a friendship before we started talking too much about this, and that was a good help. From my perspective, we talk a lot in education about the power of professional learning communities. It's become a bit of an educational buzzword in the last 10 years. I think it's great as an organizational tool. We rally around the concept of teachers getting together and working together and collaborating on best practices and sharing data on students. What intrigued me the most about what Dr. Preston and his students are doing is that, to me, it's the first example I've really seen of a classroom becoming a powerful professional learning community. And I can see no downside to that. I'm very intrigued by what's going on here. I think it's a powerful learning tool. When Dr. Preston talks about this being the future of education, I believe he's really onto something. In education, the promise of technology has largely been lost. I mean, we've been very gadget happy and software happy over the years, and here we're using technology in a different way to connect people, and I think in that sense we're really onto something very, very powerful. So I'm here in support of this, and the first conversations that Dr. Preston and I had, I told him, okay, I'm going to put on my administrator hat, and here are all the typical questions that are going to get hurled at you. Are we keeping students safe? What are we doing about privacy, those issues that you raised earlier? And he was able to address those to my satisfaction, and we quickly moved on from there because I see this as the future, and I see this as very, very powerful.
So do you see this working with other subjects?
Yes, I do see this working with other subjects. But as Dr. Preston said, I think it's new. It's very early, and it's not something that can be done to others. It's something that people have to come to freely. And I think in that sense, as it grows, that will happen.
So, I mean, are other teachers in your school, I mean, is it easier for them if there's something that, if this is an approach that they would like to include because Dr. Preston has, you know, paved some of the way?
Oh, absolutely. I might have to ask the other teacher sitting next to me about that particular issue. But yeah, the fact that he's done so much of the heavy lifting already and worked through some of the initial challenges, which I think are overcoming some of the barriers that are so strong in education, because we're still using that industrial era instructional model of one-to-many. And I think that the fact that he's been able to bridge so much of that with parents and so forth, and the students themselves, is going to make it a lot easier for other teachers to get involved.
So,
Tara, I want to jump in a second because you mentioned curriculum and could it be used for other topics?
mm-hmm.
Last year I gave a talk at the CUE conference, the Computer Users in Education conference, and one of the audience members, I had my students in on the call, or in on the talk rather, via Skype. One of the participants in the audience asked, well, I'm a math teacher, I don't really know that this would apply to my class, and Ian's counterpart in Commons Consulting, Trevor Hudgens, whipped up a model blog for that teacher and sent the link in about 30 minutes. And so for anybody who's inclined to see things this way, it's all possible. I think what we're really talking about institutionally is a lot of traditional barriers that have people already feeling like desperate times call for desperate measures. They're already maxed out and feeling very busy and overwhelmed. All of the traditional arguments, they're not incentivized to do anything extra, that challenge people's thinking when you take an entrepreneur mindset and put it in. The institution is basically built for long-time strength but not agility and change. The other thing along that line is curriculum-wise, you can do this with all of the Common Core standards in mind. I think that we have a mistake in prepositions. I'm going to put on my English teacher hat. We shouldn't be teaching to the standards. We should be teaching from the standards. The standards are just the standards, but that's a jumping off place. When you and I went to school, some of the standards that we look at were way earlier on in our experience. We're not asking very much of our students, technically speaking. So when we talk about standards, I see that not as an endpoint, but as a beginning to a conversation about where do we go from here. Yesterday, in fact, Sarah, were you here? You want to talk about our conversation yesterday about Henry V? Come on up.
Hello.
And this just came in from one of the students. I'll put that right up in front. Can you see that, Tara, on your screen?
Yes, I can see that. Maybe go a little slower. If here is no rule book, teachers won't believe it or won't to take time to write it, or want to take time to write it. Okay.
So that was anonymous, but they wanted me to show you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and we were talking about, yesterday Dr. Preston and I had a conversation about teaching Henry V to the classes here in the AP unit, and we were talking about how we could both collaborate with each other, because I really like Shakespeare, and I understand him and I get him whenever he talks. So we were talking about how maybe we could connect and help the students learn different sorts of literature, and I like to use YouTube as the way that I learn, and I like to make YouTube videos, so I think that YouTube is a good medium for students to learn about different things.
And after posting a resource on To Be or Not to Be, Sarah came up to me and said, hey, can we read Henry V? And it wasn't on the calendar. It is now.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great story. I love that.
Sorry.
Did I hear grumblings behind you, Sarah? Is that what was going on?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Were there some grumblings behind you?
Yeah. They were like, oh, why more Shakespeare? Yeah. So, I think it's really cool that being a student of Dr. Preston's, I can suggest things that I might want to learn more about, and that I can help my fellow classmates learn. I think it's really neat that he allows us to suggest things, Yeah.
There's a lot of peer learning going on, whether it's in class or through the blogs.
Yeah, and you were talking about how are we connecting with outside areas. YouTube has been a big way for me to connect with other people, and like people comment from all over the world. Like I've got people from Taiwan who are subscribed to me, so and they like chime in sometimes and like say, hey, I really liked your idea on this video, it really helped me out. So I think that sort of connection is really good. Yeah.
That's great. I love it. Okay, so we haven't heard from you, the other teacher in the room back there.
Yeah, I come to this in a unique experience. I took Dr. Preston in my graduate work, and now I'm working with them on this campus. So I have a peer and as a student with Dr. Preston. I look back at my blog that he created for us as a student, and I still refer back to it in my new curriculum of teaching U.S. history and about Horace Mann and the foundation of education in America. And I see all of our thoughts, and so I can tap right back into where I was 4 years ago, and that group of thinking is all right there because it is still alive on the internet. And you can see where you were thinking at that point, and then with more knowledge and experience, how you moved from that point to where you are today, and you can take your new class through your experience, and not to say that's the only way, but to show other forms and how other people saw that same experience. So for me, I think that the lasting effect for being a student with Dr. Preston is that he's still continuing to teach me, even though we haven't had any conversation in 4 years about John Dewey, right? And so for me, I think that's one of the golden pieces of education, that the teacher can still teach and we can still have that classroom experience post. Versus when I look at some of my graduate work at Cal Poly, it's in a book that I don't have the guts to throw it away. In my binder, I don't have the guts to throw it away, but I don't look at it. Because when I'm lesson planning, all I have to do is go right into that blog and I can tap right to it. As a teacher, talking to Dr. Preston peer-to-peer about integrating more of what their reality is going to look like and what they were raised with versus my reality at 39, and I was the pioneer class in 4th grade to have one Mac in our district, right? We were like, woo! Everyone had a lottery to get in that class, and we won, and it was one Mac. And so you look at to see the difference of how their world works and how my world is. And I think that we do need to tap into the world and have more ideas and vision than just what we see in these four walls, because there is so much more depth when more minds are looking at that same subject. I think one of the brilliance of Dr. Preston is that he does have an open classroom, whether he's teaching 11th graders, 9th graders, or graduate students of, this is our educational time. How are we going to spend it? Assuming that everyone is coming in as a student is a different premise than I think most teachers have today. That it is classroom management and that there's 40 against 1. And it's when you walked into his classroom, and even today when you talk to students that we share, it is not that same experience of it's us against them and I'm going to corral them and we're going to get through Hamlet, you know. It is, how do we understand this piece of literature in its context in past, present, and future. So I'm in a unique position because I've seen both sides of Dr. Preston.
Have you incorporated then into your class some of these same methods?
Say it again?
Have some of the same methods and work that Dr. Preston is doing in his class, are you using it in your class?
Definitely the open, that this is our learning environment. I've taken a lot of plays from his playbook on that, but I've not incorporated technology as much as I would like to. It was just a stutter start. I transferred mid-year from a different school, so it was just a stutter start, and being a first-time AP teacher, just literally a chapter ahead of those guys. So give me some time to get a groove, and then yes, more will be incorporated, because I think it's needed. When you look at the world that they'll be facing, technology, they have to embrace technology because that is their world.
Okay, so, and I think some students wanted to chime in here.
Well, I know Matt had a comment that went with what I was saying.
We got a comment from Brady Redmond saying that because so many people are able to access the library that we're creating, that we're getting lots of opinions and responses about anything we put up, whether it be related to the class or not. And it makes him feel as if the community he never leaves the community when he walks out of the classroom or when he logs out of his account. That the comments are left there and he's seeing this community help him even though they're not enrolled.
And then the comment that I had that goes back to like communicating and collaborating with each other with our blogs is, this is from Lacey, and she's saying that the collaboration kind of is a lot of freedom, and it gives us freedom to do what we want, and instead of it considered cheating, like collaborating, we're actually getting more done because Dr. Preston not only thinks we can do it, but trusts us in doing it, and knows that with that freedom, we can do so much more than what he could pigeonhole us to. And then going from a leadership point, I think everyone in this class is a leader because we all do have blogs, and we are all pioneers in this, in showing that we can learn from each other, and we can learn from the internet that we are creating ourselves. And not only seeing leadership in here, but me having a leadership role outside of this class in our school as ASB, I see that everyone in here has such great leadership qualities, and a lot of it's coming from the blog, and a lot of people are taking the blog and what they're doing online and writing and doing new things and creative things. Other people are seeing it in class or on the internet and then going up to them in class and like, hey, that was really good, or see them in person and be like, hey, that was awesome. I want to look up to you now, and then all of a sudden, all of those people on the internet are now being looked up to in person.
Yeah. And another comment I had from another student, this is from Casey Gurgiolo, and she was talking about how a lot of us are leaders or do have a lot of activities, have jobs to do outside of class and outside of school in general. So having easy access to all of these sources, whether it be on your phone, on your computer, makes it a lot easier to get your homework done instead of being like, oh, I forgot my book in my locker and I can't do anything about it. It's like, no, I have my sources right here online and I can get to it as soon as I get where I need to go.
Okay. And time-wise, you can see, Tara, that we have a changing of the guard. We can keep the call live, but I wanted to explain why people were walking in and out. If you have another class to get to, please feel free to do it quietly. If you can stay, you're welcome. If that requires me to make some apologies later, I'll be happy to do it. Yes. While you're thinking about that, Tara, one of the assumptions behind this is a positive view of human nature. If you believe that given their own freedom, most people most of the time will do the right thing, this becomes academic, literally. And because of the blog format and the online curation, you can see what people are doing in real time. Cheating isn't an issue. Last year there were some students who were tempted to take shortcuts, and then their friends sort of reminded them, you know, this is public. And that kind of went away faster than I even expected. So in terms of, you know, it's like Emersonian, trust men to be great and they will prove themselves great. I think that's what you're hearing here. Caitlin, did you have your...
Yes, I remember now. Okay. What I like about this is that my best friend is in another class period, and we get to actually collaborate more than we thought we would be able to. We did a lot of remixes at the beginning of this week, in remixing different our vocab and Hamlet and different activities to that. Well, we collaborated on those and made it something enjoyable to be learning, and it was all fun because I got to see what I did, and then sent it to her, and then she added to it, and then we had this ongoing thing that amused us, and that's, I think, the point what Preston wants us to get to is that he wants us to enjoy everything in this class, which I personally am, and I think this is all super exciting.
So have your experiences in this course impacted how you relate to other courses that you're taking?
Oh, totally. I think that if every class was like this, it would be so easier to manage everything where it's online, going, okay, I'm going to do this, and then right after, okay, switch to that, instead of getting out my economics book and being like, all right, now I've got to open to a page, got to write down this on a piece of paper. So not only that, I feel that the way I present myself and the way I hold myself in front of others, like person to person or on the internet, has improved immensely just because of what Preston has kind of opened to us and showed us. And just from that, I feel like I've grown as a person.
Anybody else? Or is it all new people in there now?
I have two comments that kind of tie into each other, one from Alex Lane and another one from Austin. I don't have a last name to give you, I'm sorry. But what they were both saying is that this course, as we kind of touched on already, is really personalized, and you kind of can add into you can add into your course. And so when we added Henry V, and we are really making this course ours, and in some ways it can make it more rigorous, and for some it can be easier. And as Alex Lane was saying, this course, even though it's harder than most of his other courses, he enjoys the challenge because it's giving him something he's never gotten in any of his other classes. It's not playing pencil to paper per se. It's more him challenging himself mentally. Oh,
good.
Okay. And then I have one from Justin Thompson that says, when Preston mentioned teachers using experts to learn, and if this could work in other classes, my biology teacher will reference to YouTube videos for us to watch. These videos are made by other teachers and organizations like Khan Academy, and they make learning easier and more convenient.
Thank you. So we are approaching, I guess, 11:30, which means that's the end of this webinar. But we have a few minutes for closing thoughts and for anybody there. So Dr. Preston or Superintendent or any of the students, do you have any final comments?
Okay. Tara, we've got a couple students who want to comment, and then I'll chime in if we've got time and wrap up. Ready?
Okay.
My name is Brady Redmond, and throughout my high school career, junior high career, even elementary school, I always had learning blocks. We do some neurological issues, and I always felt in most classes I had a huge issue with learning. I've struggled through school my entire life. It's been the worst experience. But when I came to Dr. Preston's class in the 10th grade, the first time I had his class, and now in this grade, I feel like it's almost like a break. Like it's a lot easier because there isn't one way of learning anymore. We each learn our own ways, as we've touched on. And with the blog and the different ways to do the projects, we get to choose how to learn and how to get these things done. There's no longer just this line we have to stay on. We get to hear from it. We get to use our minds and really get in depth with it. It's not just about the rules and what to say here and then. We get to, I'm trying to think of the word. It's more, I'll just use the word open because I can't think of a better word, but I really feel like it helps everybody learn instead of just focusing on a single person, because our school system itself is based on a century-old system that was made in a time when most people were illiterate. They didn't see the value of education. And for years, we've been stagnant. We haven't moved at all. And now, in this tiny little, just a few class periods in one classroom, tiny little school district, tiny town, in this huge world, we're finally starting to move it again. It makes me feel really honored and special that we're getting to open up this whole new world of education now, after years.
What I'm excited for is I have a younger sister who has always gotten like new technology faster than I did when I was my age. And I was like, why is she getting this 5 years before I did? And it's because times are changing. But I'm excited for when she goes into high school and hopefully has Dr. Preston as a teacher to see how it advanced and to see what new things have come up and to hopefully see more to just doing what we're doing in this class.
And Vince, go.
I think it's kind of nice to finally, I guess, open up the obvious, because we've been growing electronically for years. I mean, 1 year it's the iPhone 4, then the 4S, then the 5. Now it's probably going to be the 5. Who knows, whatever it could be. But it's nice that in one class we finally start to say, how come all we're doing is showing this off to the people we're around, instead of using this as a way that it could be. So like using the internet on our phones, laptops. I mean, they're so shunned away in all of my other classes, and we're over here trying to figure out different ways to turn in assignments. And it's like, well, we have an internet access where we can quickly and easily contact each other. Why are we trying to make this so paper oriented? Why aren't we going around electronics? And we've paid thousands of dollars as a government and as a whole, as a person, not as a person, as a community. We pay millions of dollars to try to get this new electronics and these new ways of having things work better with better graphics, but we're not using them for, I guess, the obvious, which could be enhancing our education and communicating with people farther from where we are. So like you even, it could be used as a great example. I mean, usually, oh, I'm going to go Facebook my friend who lives 2 blocks away. Well, why aren't we doing that with somebody who lives in Africa, or somebody who we usually wouldn't be able to communicate with within the matter of seconds, which we can now, and it's nice to actually kind of start to wake up at least the Rigetti community and show them what's possible.
And Tara, I know we're running out of time, so I'm not going to say very much, and the students have said it all so well. I have to say, though, that coming out and Brady in talking about his education difficulties, I've started asking about this in the 1st grade. You know, why does education have to be the way it is? And I went through lots of different careers. I was a professor at UCLA. I taught at other graduate institutes. I had a consulting firm. I wrote for the Los Angeles Times on education. I have never been more gratified and happy to get up in the morning and come to work, because I don't feel like this is something I'm doing. I feel like this is something I'm a part of. And it's not just our classes or our local network. It's you, too. What DML and other communities are doing around this to raise the awareness and build the conversations. I really feel like this is an exciting time to be a part of learning, and I really want to say not only thank you to all the students and to John and Laura, but also thank you to you for hosting the event.
Thank you all very, very much. This has been a lot of fun. And I just have a few closing notes before we stop the broadcast. But you guys were great. Thank you. And I hope that we stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Okay, so to keep today's conversation going, we encourage you to continue using the Twitter hashtag #ConnectedLearning and posting in the comments section of this webinar's page in the archive section of connectedlearning.tv. On that same web page later today, we'll have a full recording of this awesome webinar and other curated content. As a reminder to those watching on live stream or watching this as a recording, the 2013 Digital Media and Learning Conference is coming up in March. The call for workshop, panel, and paper proposals is open, and you can learn more at the website dml2013.dmlhub.net. The next webinar will be Thursday, November 1st at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, that's 1 p.m. Eastern, with Aaron Riley, who's at USC Annenberg Innovation Lab, and Iona Lirrit talking about why we need a participatory approach to professional development in education. So that's it. Thank you all very much, and I hope you have a fantastic afternoon.
Thank you, Tara.
Bye.